Yeah, I just wanted to add on that my ancestry and background of my family was totally in contrast to your dad's. Because number one, I've not seen any of my grandparents except one grandmother on my dad's side. So all were gone by the time I was born.
How did they pass away?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, my grandmother, mom's side, she died with smallpox epidemic when my mom was a year old. And my grandfather on mom's side, he died, I think he had a pneumonia or something. He retired from army and he died 10 months I was born. So I have no exposure, what kind of people they were. And my grandfather on my father's side, he died old age, but before I was born, because my dad was the youngest of 6, 7 children in the family. So you imagine by the time I was born, he must be old enough. But his wife, my grandmother, she is the only one I have seen, because she lived with us and she lived up to, she was like 94, 95 years old. She died of very old age. But as I heard from my family, in 2, 3 generations, nobody did farming, even though we were farmers' community. My great-grandfather, he moved from his old village, Nathana, which is called Bayas, the 22 village, which his ancestry goes with Maharaja Patiala. He moved somewhere in Rajasthan. He was employed there, like a Tahsildar or something. Why he moved there, I have no idea.
What was his name?
His name was Pakhar Singh.
How do you spell
My
it?
dad's Pakhar, P-A-K-H-A-R, Pakhar Singh. And my grandmother's name was Prem Kaur. They used to call her Premo. So my grandfather, then he moved back. The land we have in that village there was no water there. So it was like useless. He has a lot of land, but it was useless. Maybe that motivated him to go and move to Rajasthan. So, but he left there. He wanted to come back to his village. And he came back to Nathana, and they have, my grandmother and grandfather have like 4 daughters born, one in a row. They did not have a son. My dad was very late child. He was the only son. So my grandfather was very scared. In those days, people have other families, extended families. They always want to take over your land if you have no son. The girls could not inherit your land. So he sent my father to study to one of his sister who was married in the area where is now Pakistan. His older sister. He lived with his brother-in-law and older sister and went up to high school there. And after that he came back to the village, and that is when he got, somebody referred him to come to Patiala and work for Maharaja of Patiala. So he never did any farming, nothing like that. And then, as I mentioned early, he was around 20s. My mom was around 17 when they got married. And his whole life he lived in Patiala.
How did he meet your mom?
It was arranged marriage. My grandfather on mom's side has a very close Muslim guy who was in police service, who also helped my dad to get in police service. And he was close friend of my grandfather. And that's how he says, I have a friend who was in army, they have only daughter, and he wants her to get married to somebody who live in the city. Because everybody, the whole movement was to get out of the land and progress further. It's a progress in city. So he is the one who arranged that marriage. And so, I have not gone to a village till I was almost in high school, maybe once or twice. So I have no exposure to village life. I will just go to maybe one of my Masi, whose whole family is in Canada and England, the one we mentioned, That was my Masi's family, and that was my master was my favorite uncle. So that's only I used to go there because I didn't have grandparents to go to my other villages, And so that's how my father has always rented the land. He never tried to get involved with the land either. But growing up, I grew up the whole life in a city. But again, in a very conservative family, we were not allowed to just go around with other kids in school unless my dad knew their father. Like, my best friends were Damanjeet, Rajdev, Umi. One's father was a judge, others' two fathers were doctors, and he knew them well. So I was allowed to go only to their home. And only I was allowed to go with them to see a movie maybe twice a year or something like that. So my home right in city, it was like a fort. So we won't go out like a neighborhood and play or something. And also because when we were little, all our neighborhood except 2 homes were Muslim. So that was another reason. Even in those days, Muslims and Hindus, Sikhs, they did not socialize much. Maybe on holidays and other people will send them gift and other, So my best part of growing up was before even high school, because the education was not so hard. I always stood first till 10th grade in my class. And in the first 5 years, I will spend 4 months on the mountains in the hills in Chile and rest of the year in Patiala. And I had this mountain just like that. I had that back of my mind always, that when I grow up, I am going to live in mountains where it's cold and cool and snow and other things, Because my father has to stay with the Maharaja because they didn't live in summer there. They will go to Chal, and we will go to school there in the hill. And then when the whole Maharaja and all his officers come back to Patiala, we'll come with our dad. My mother stayed mostly in Patiala because my brothers were in college, and we have a big difference, The oldest child of my parents was a little girl who died when she had a pneumonia. Then she has this...
What was her name?
Her name was Bubble or Bablu, something, was just something like that. She didn't have the confirmed name as yet,
Oh, she had died before birth?
Yeah, no, died, she was 10 months or so
Okay.
old, In those days, the medical health, protection was not too much, you don't have vaccination, you don't have those antibiotics and other. Then there were 3 boys in a row. So by the time I was in, 6th, 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade, my brothers already went as army officers. And by the time I was in 8th grade, my sister got married. She married right after high school. She was 15 when she got married. Because the partition was just a few years before that. My parents, especially my mother, was so shook up, knowing all the stories, what happened to women and the girls. She was very keen. The moment she became a teenager, she wanted her to get married. But it was different with me. By that time, they felt a little bit more secure that it's okay, they can grow, And also, my mom was very, very supportive of education. Even after my sister got married, she put her through BA. She has a bachelor's degree. So she did privately come to Patiala a few months and prepare for exam and pass it, And she was a big supporter of me that whatever I want to do in studies, I can do it. Number one, I think their only responsibility was myself financially because my brothers were on their own. And the biggest trauma I had in the first years of my school, like up to 5th grade, the loss of my oldest brother.
What was his name?
His name was Gurnam Singh. He died at the age of 21 with tuberculosis. Prior to that, they did put him in sanatorium. They didn't have antibiotics and those treatments those days. And so that was the biggest stress to my mom. And she almost went through a little bit total change in her personality, was kind of depressed. and she never got over till my older brother, they have a son, and she started believing that my nephew, who's Charanjit, who retired as a major general, that he is like reincarnated as her oldest son. And that is the time when she started feeling everything. They look alike, same. And also when my brother died, my older second brother just married, and his wife was pregnant. And when my older brother got sick, and he says, you know, I wish I see their other grandkid. So my mom always believed that my son came back. So that slowly she started, you know, accepting that. So that's how it happened. And then, you know, as I said, I went to pre-med. I went to all women's school, and suddenly I have to go to do pre-med. So there are only 2-3 colleges in Punjab where only women's colleges have a pre-med. Women college have mostly art subject. People did BA and went in teaching. So only few colleges in Punjab had science courses. So right in Patiala, Mahindra College, we had science subjects. So we 6-7 of my classmates, as a group, we joined pre-med there. That was the biggest class, had girls there. So that is where I got a little bit more comfortable studying with co-eds, you know. And then I got admission right in Patiala Medical College. So I was lucky that from the birth till 2 years after my marriage, I grew up and lived in the same city. And I still have a same home even after my marriage, because when we got married, we both were like, you call house surgeons. When you are, you know, getting training, exposure to the clinical, but you have a degree, and you get paid. I was paid 150 rupees, and Dad was paid 200 rupees. No way we could support ourselves. So my parents said, it's okay, they want to get married, fine, that's good, but we have a big home. Because my brothers were gone. So all those rooms are lying vacant. So we stayed with my parents, and we have a fun. We didn't have to worry about cooking, cleaning, servant, everything. And Dad was preparing for his post-graduation. That's where Bhagwant uncle and they used to study together.
Mr. Callan from...
And Rosie was born, and I don't have to worry because everybody took care of Rosie. I didn't have to do anything other than going to hospital. I was working as anesthesiologist.
We got a home and hospital then.
Yeah, and
Hospital
then
quarters.
after Rosie was 1 year old, then the hospital gave us a 2-bedroom accommodation, the independent home, because I was in anesthesia, I had to be late sometime. So that's the first time we moved out of my home. But we took my mother's servant because they thought they need help. So my family has been very, very supportive. You know, just like, you know, sometimes Sonia was laughing the other day that Dimp is more close to Dad, you know. So same way my parents became more close to Dad, your dad. He was favorite ahead of their own sons for everything till they died. You know, they'll take his view, any suggestion, and they used to call him Dr. Saab. They never addressed him with Amrik, you know, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's great. Let me